Here's your Game 5 recap of the 2023 World Chess Championship. We have Jan with the white pieces, Liren with the black pieces, and we see Jan go back to e4, which he played in Game 1. And the players reach a Ruy Lopez after bishop to b5. And at this point, after bishop e7, we see a new move by Jan. He plays d3. New move in the sense that in game number 1, he played what's called a delayed exchange variation, traded for that knight on c6. Now we're going with a more classical mainline approach. And this has been played thousands of times in the database. Let's see who plays the first novelty, though. That's something in the World Chess Championship matches. It's always interesting to see which player surprises the other player first. Okay, this is all pretty standard. H3, that's the trendy way to play the position. The grandmasters have all been playing this recently. And at this point, a4 was played 9 times in the database. Rook to e1 was played 90 times. So now we're starting to get into rare territory. Jan playing a4 instead of rook to e1. And these positions just give white a very, very tiny edge. But what I like about them is they're strategic in nature, and no pieces have been traded off the board yet. So there's a lot of play in these positions. And stay tuned. This game gets really exciting. I think this is the best World Championship match ever, potentially, at least in recent times. Knight to a5. Retreats the bishop. On to c5. Bishop to g5. So at this point, we were following one game. It was a rapid game between Firouzja and Giri just last year, back in August. And in this position, Firouzja played knight to a3. And Jan is deviating from that and playing 12 bishop to g5. So really, Jan was the first player to get us into the rare territory with 9 games, and he was the first player to leave a known position in the Grandmaster database with bishop to g5. So I think Jan's prep looks a little bit better at this point, and he was playing much faster than Ding too, which has kind of been the story of the match in terms of time management. h6 played, bishop takes, bishop takes. I find this kind of interesting. So Jan again decides to trade a bishop for a knight. And a lot of times we're taught that a bishop pair is worth about half a pawn. And this is something that we need to always look at the imbalances and try to figure out, okay, is that bishop pair actually worth half a pawn? Or are there other dynamics in the position? And in this case, none of the pawns have been traded off. And because none of the pawns have been traded off, that can favor the knights slightly. The knights can get around the board more easily. And this bishop on f6 is sort of a bad piece because these pawns are also on dark squares. So that bishop really has trouble getting into the game. Whereas the light square bishops for both sides have these nice long diagonals. So you could say that maybe the knights are slightly better than the bishops or close to equal in this case. A takes b5, a takes b5. Another thing to note here with the pawn structure, Ding has these advanced pawns on the queen side. Look for Ding to play queenside, and Jan has the bishop pointing kingside and this pawn structure pointing kingside. Look for Jan to attack over there. So we're going to see this imbalance of queenside versus kingside this game, and that tends to lead to exciting positions. Knight b to d2, knight back to c6, and at this point the knight probably wants to head to e7, out to g6, and then look at a square like f4. So when you see these double king pawn structures and these bishops kind of off on the queenside bishops, what can happen is you can try to get a knight onto f5 or f4 if no bishops attack those squares, right? So this is an idea for white, or bringing this knight around. White wants a knight on f5, black wants a knight on f4. So kind of keep that idea in mind. Oh, and we have a live stream coming up. You can get your games analyzed. I want to show you this announcement. Check out the link in the description. So even if you don't want to submit a game, come hang out and watch. It's on Saturday, April 22nd. I will be going through everybody's games. So you can submit a game, ask a question about your game, and get it analyzed live. We will also have a cool promotion coming up in that live stream too. So make sure to check that out. All right, back to the game. So now we see bishop to d5 by Jan. Queen to b3 could be a good move coming up, double attacking this f pawn on the diagonal, but also poking at the weakest pawn on the board, the pawn on b5. So Ding decides to trade. Now there is no queen b3, right? This pawn on b5 is a little bit safer. He plays queen to d7, and I like what Ding is doing here. The rook is coming to a8, attacking the queen, and Ding will take control of the a file, the only open file on the board. Rook to e1 by Jan. And this is kind of freeing up that f1 square for the knight, like we talked about. That knight wants to reroute, get to a more active square on f5. Rook a8, queen d1. And again, Jan has this advantage king side. Ding has this advantage queen side. So this is going to be the dynamic for the rest of the game. The d2 knight wants to head to e3 via f1. And from there, it controls these important light squares. Bishop to d8. You can tell Ding looks a little bit passive here with having to play a move like bishop to d8, but I think the idea is he wants to unwind the position a bit. He would love to trade off that strong bishop on d5, maybe bring this knight back. So that's why he's playing bishop to d8. Knight f1, knight e7. Here's the offer of the trade, either knight for bishop or bishop for bishop. And really, Jan can't leave the bishop sitting there. I don't think knight e3 is that great of a move after knight takes d5. So he decides to take. Queen takes b7. And even though this looks like kind of an equal endgame, the tactics are about to get crazy coming up. Knight to e3. And what I like about this position is, even though it looks quiet so far, there's a plan for white to just slowly expand kingside. Pawn to h4, pawn to h5, pawn to g3, king to g2. Jan can just keep expanding kingside and slowly bring some pressure over there. Whereas Ding's plan needs to be something like pawn to b4, rook to a2, get something going over on the queen side. Bishop to b6 by Ding. And he would like to play rook a2 at some point. Pawn to h4, there it is. Queen c6. First inaccuracy of the game. It's a small inaccuracy. The idea is to play c4 and try to get this queenside play going. I think a little bit better is to play rook to a2. This is with the help of the engine, by the way. Queen to b3, queen a6. This is showing that full queenside control. Queen to a4 is a threat, and I think this position is very close to equal. Whereas after queen to c6, played in the game, this gives a very slight advantage to Jan. So Jan plays h5. And he's looking for this idea, knight h4, knight f5. This is defended by the other knight, attacked by this knight. And what Jan would love is to have an imbalance of just one dominant knight sitting on one of these light squares against this bishop. So if Jan can trade one set of knights and create a good knight against bad bishop scenario, that could be one decent way to play for a win. On to c4 by Ding, there it is. Strongest move on the board. And again, Ding wants to play queenside. And d4 played by Jan. Man, Jan loves aggressive chess, and this is a strong idea. He's locking up these pawns on the queen side a bit, and he's playing for explosive center play, because if these pawns trade off, all of a sudden e5 could become a weakness. And now, at this point, rook to d8 is a good move as well, but it just feels way too passive. So Ding decides to trade. Knight takes d4. And these knights are becoming very strong. I love how Jan plays with the knights. He seems like he's looking for these types of positions. Queen to c5 played in the game. This is, again, a small inaccuracy by Ding. Jan has played pretty much a perfect game so far. Queen to b7 tries kind of the same idea, but what happens with queen to b7 is if Jan plays the move in the game, queen to g4, there's bishop takes d4, eliminating the good knight for white on d4, and then queen c8 offering the queen trade. And this is equal territory. Queen c5, the problem is there's not this immediate bishop takes d4 threatened. So after queen to g4, all of a sudden, Jan is getting some play in the position. A little bit stronger was queen to f3. And after queen e5, Jan can use the g4 square for the knight. So we're looking at very small inaccuracies so far, but sometimes these things matter because they can add up to your opponent making a bigger mistake if you can keep the pressure on with most accurate moves. So queen g4 played here. Queen to e5. This is threatening bishop takes d4 immediately. At the moment, it would win a pawn. So Jan decides to retreat. Queen to e6 offering a queen trade. And the queen trade is a good move. But as we've seen in this match, Ding keeps offering queen trades and Jan keeps avoiding them. He's playing for the win. He does not want to settle for a quick endgame draw. Previous World Championship matches, we see these quick endgame draws. This match with Jan Nepomniachtchi playing against Ding Liren, we're just not seeing that. Knight takes f5, e takes f5. Jan accepts double pawns again. We've seen this in other games, but he's playing for the initiative. He's really a fun player to watch. So this pawn on f5 is very close to the black king. We already got the queen over here. We got the knight over here. The rook's on the open e file. Jan is all in on the king side attack. Queen to f6 played by Ding. Small inaccuracy again. Queen to d7 would have been a little bit better. And the idea with queen to d7 is this pawn could come to f6 to help shut down the advanced pawns by white. Okay, back to the game. Queen to e4 played. Excellent move by Jan. This pokes at the rook in the corner, and it prevents Ding from playing d5. So the ideas for Ding in this position are to play d5 and b4. He needs to get his queenside pawns rolling to create some counterplay against the kingside pressure that Jan has. Queen to e4, though, kind of puts Ding in an awkward position, and it feels like black is stuck. So let's see if Jan can break through and create a larger advantage. Rook to b8. Now Ding's looking at playing b4. And if c takes b4, the queen hits b2. So a cool move by Jan, just rook e2, guards this b2 pawn, and he's playing the position slowly. Bishop c5, renewing the threat of b4. Pawn to g4, another excellent move by Jan. This advantage is around 3/10 of a pawn according to Stockfish, but I was listening to the commentary from chess.com and they really liked White's position here. I think in a practical game, human versus human, this is a lot harder to play for black than for the silicone engines. Okay, now after pawn g4, the idea is this pawn defends f5, and that opens up the queen to attack the c pawn. So now b4 is a mistake because of queen takes c4. So notice how every move Jan is looking, what is Ding threatening, and can I shut it down? Queen to d8 played, now Ding is threatening d5. What does Jan do? Queen d5, no, push for you. King to f8. And at this point, Ding seems like he's out of moves. And this is pretty incredible because it feels the position should be solid enough for Ding, but king to f8 is actually the wrong square for the king. Stockfish says the king needs to stay on g8. But who's going to understand why that is? It's really complicated. Let me show you an example. Let's say rook to c8 by Ding. This is the strongest move. Now we're going to give Jan the idea that he played in the game. Rook to e4, rook a8, g5. So this is coming up in the game. H takes g5, rook g4. Now in this position, this is very deep. The counterplay coming from Ding can be rook check and queen a8. And the whole point is you want to get the queen on this diagonal. So right now the white queen is on the same diagonal. You need the rook to defend a square for the black queen to get on the diagonal. That's how Ding can get enough counterplay to hold equality. So king to f8 played. There's no way to currently get the queen on this diagonal. Keep that in mind. That's a key point. King to f1 played. The idea here is he wants to run the king up to e2 if there's an eventual check. This is very deep, but he doesn't want his king to have to be on this diagonal, right? He wants the king coming over to e2. Rook to c8. This is a mistake. So now we see a mistake by Ding. There's no easy way to get the queen on those light squares for counterplay. And now an excellent move by Jan, rook to e4. He wants to play g5. And I don't think Ding saw this idea coming in advance. He plays rook to b8. And now a brilliant move, pawn to g5. It looks like a sacrifice of a pawn. And Ding wanted to just sit back and play passive defense. I don't think he saw that coming. So here, queen to d7 is the best defense by black. And after g takes h, this is probably still winning for white. And you have to let Stockfish run pretty deep. If you only run it on like depth 18 or depth 20, it'll say like 8/10 of a pawn for white. But if you let it run deeper, it'll say white's up +3 or more. So this position is already close to winning in a very complicated, drawn out endgame. So even the computers at low depths have trouble understanding it. So we can't fault Ding for taking, but the attack has been brilliant by Jan so far. This whole idea of rook e4 G5. Super strong play by Jan, very creative. He plays rook to G4, threatening to pick up the pawn. Now you might be wondering, this was not played in the game, but what happens after F6? This is a really cool tactic, and Jan saw it. He had to have seen it to go into this line. Knight to H4, another brilliant move, trying to come into G6, which is almost checkmate. And if you take the knight, there's pawn to H6. This is mate in 12. Just to show you an example, G5 trying to shut down the pawns, en passant, G7 check, G8 queen, and that's going to be game over. Incredible. So F6 does not work here due to knight H4. So Ding plays rook to A8, trying to get active down the A file. Knight takes G5, threatening a checkmate. Gets his pawn back, so we're equal material. Rook check, king runs out to E2. Queen E7, he's going for counterplay. But Jan had this planned out, and he was playing the moves quickly. Jan could smell blood, and he plays very confidently when he's looked at his lines and he's sure of his attack. It's a sharp position. We got full control by Jan with the white pieces. Queen to E8. So now we're at move 41. The players each earn their bonus 1 hour at move 40. Jan has some time to figure out, how do I convert this game? He knows it's in winning territory. The ideas of F6 and H6 are both critical for white to play for the win, but you don't have to rush them. And Jan plays king to F3. It's a good move. He needs to move his king up the board eventually in this endgame. Now we're back to what to do as black. Queen to A8 played, offering the queen trade. So Jan had this calculated, and all of a sudden, both players started playing very quickly. Queen takes A8. The recapture is forced. And now Jan plays F6. Excellent move. And this line is pretty much forced now. The best move is G6, which Ding played. H takes, F takes, rook takes, rook A2. So at this point, rook A2, Ding spent quite a while on this move. Both players, I think, knew that white is winning here. Even though for players of our levels, not grandmasters, unless you're grandmaster watching this video, this is not an obvious win, but you can feel that white is winning. White's up a pawn. It's very close to queening. And the idea is you need to route your king, move your king up to F5 and route your knight over to E6. Some combination like that with the rook coming down to G8 or G7. There's a couple different ways to maneuver the pieces, but you need to move king and knight up the board and then push the pawn up for white. The move played in the game, rook to A2, this really made Jan think. And someone in the chess-based cloud ran their stockfish to depth 59 and found this as a mate in 23 with best play for white. And the idea is king to G4, knight to G5, rook G7, knight E6, and push the F pawn up the board. And the problem is this bishop is really helpless in the defense. This pawn can't move because the bishop drops, and black is only winning the one pawn, and this queenside play is too slow. So pretty incredible. This is a mate in 23. Jan finds the first move, king G4. Interesting though, watching the commentary by chess.com, Anish Giri was mentioning that Jan's ears were turning bright red. Jan was really nervous that maybe he missed the win, and he spent quite a bit of time on this king G4 move. He thought the win was just immediate, and after rook to A2, he was like, oh no, rook takes B2 is about to happen. Do I have enough to win? He doesn't want to let this win slip through his hands. But he found king G4, correct move, rook takes B2, and then he finds rook to H6. And in this position, Ding thought for a while and he resigned. I'll just show you why. If you play a move like bishop takes F2, trying to win a pawn, this is a good checkmate in 3. We have rook check, king to F5, and there's no way to stop both knight G5 and knight takes D6 with a checkmate. What a game, what a game. I want to make note again. Go check out the links in the description. Get your game analyzed in our live stream. This is the most exciting World Championship match ever. We're going to have recaps on this channel after every game, so we'll see you in the next recap. Thanks for watching.